that's to say, I think that testing a bunch of modalities and see what works, because I believe that all of us have the same outcome in mind, where we want to have that openness, that freedom, that presence, that ability to pursue our goals and our passions.
When you look back in hindsight, everything is 2020. In hindsight, we make mistakes, we're learning from it. In hindsight, yesterday and your tomorrow. In hindsight, is so much clearer now.
All right, so I got us recording now, but we'll get started. It's just because the screen is over here. Mm-hmm. So when I'm actually looking at you, I gotta look over this way. You feel me? So
yeah.
But this is where the camera's at.
I'll only inhale in this like now, and when we're chatting, I won't be inhaling my fake shenanigans.
Yeah. Hey, do whatever you do. I'm not gonna critique you. Yeah. If you need it, go for it.
Sweet. It's less of a need, more of like just enjoy it along the way.
Okay. Hey, so you want to go ahead and just get started, or you got any questions?
I don't know, man. Let's see. One question that I'm really curious about, because I was a podcast host for last year, and it's what clicked the idea to start a podcast, and why Hindsight?
All right, awesome. So I did a few years. I did a career, so I retired from the military. And when it became time for me to get out of the military, there's stress, right? I've been doing 20-something years, and just the uncertainty of what to expect. But I successfully transitioned. There was no issues with that. But I do remember the stress. I do remember there were some hurdles that had to be overcome in that process. But then when I got on the other side, so let me go back before I jump. I took a class, and it was to prepare veterans, we weren't veterans yet, prepare service members who are about to transition. So resumes, interview process, different, networking, all these different things. But what happened towards the end is they had this alumni panel, and there were people who have gone through the same program, and they came back to tell their experiences. Right. And it kind of was, designed to give you a sort of a relief, like this is where you'll be soon. And so when I did transition, and I'm trying to keep this short, but when I did transition, when I did finally transition, I knew that I wanted to be on that alumni board. And so I went back, and I was able to do it a few times, but it just wasn't enough. And I felt that I had some things that I wanted to say. So a friend of mine, Eric Gonzalez, he and we started Hindsight, the podcast, because he was a fellow veteran as well. It took him a little bit longer, with the transition, but he was fine. And it put it on our terms. So we were able to give inspiration and things like that on our terms. And in the beginning, it really was just veterans who had transitioned and had become that, started their next phase of life. And I tried to, it's funny. It's like you're the podcast host. You've done it. You did it, Kyle.
But habit, I guess.
Yeah. No, but initially we would get people who had transitioned out, and the one guy had become a comedian. Another lady was like a serial entrepreneur, and her son was in I wouldn't say Hollywood, but in commercials and on movies and things like that. So she was a mom or manager mom or whatever the term was. So that's what we did. And it was all with the purpose of providing inspiration, providing, calm, right? And then also give some tips and techniques on things that you should probably focus on when you're about to transition from the military.
Yep. That's cool. Something that's really cool with that, and very much, dude, like, it very much lines in with a lot of the work I do, because a lot of it is identity work.
Okay. Yeah.
And so there's a couple points like what you said, and there's something that lines up, like very similar theme, different context.
Okay.
Where it's that in between phase of like chapters of life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And something that's so cool, very much resonates, is that and game recognizes game, man. That's one of my favorite ones. Game recognizes game. And I love it that the more I'm chatting with folks that have a desire to help people, I have an intuitive pull to it. I'm drawn to help people. And then it's just figuring out the best way to help people. That's pretty much what I do. We're done. So it's super cool when folks elevate themselves to a conscientiousness, to an awareness, a self-awareness, and they find their passions in their previous problems.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. So
cool. So cool. I want to do something similar with addictions and homeless folk. I want to do a similar thing. Because there's like the part where it's someone's where they don't want to be. Then there's the part where it's the first phase of a program per se. And then from there, then it's like, here you go. And then people are like, fuck, what do I do? Oh, I won't swear on the podcast. My bad.
You're good. You're good. It's not a kid's podcast.
Okay, cool.
You're good.
So then there's the first phase where it's getting the baseline. Like if someone's going from not having a job to addiction, to going through addictions, to getting a job, to getting the baseline set, and then you're left out into the wild, and there's not an integration phase in between that 2 point. And so I love that because, dude, it lines up so big with my personal, take out the it lines up with my personal mission and vision for what I have to be able to contribute. Because something that I think of, and I think it works with any community as a whole collective, I like to think of it real big where, and the frame that I'm using this is a philosophy I think of is that when you take care of the city takes care of you. And so what I'm aiming to do is just provide the quality, introduce concepts and frames in order for folks to step into their greatness. And step into their awesomeness, however the person defines that. And then I totally believe in the ripple effect where it's pay it forward. There's a movie about it. It didn't exactly end the most happy with the kid. Spoiler alert. And however, I think the point of it is very important. I think paying it forward and contributing and turning those problems into passions and then helping other people solve those problems faster than you solve them. Oh my goodness.
Isn't that powerful?
Supercharged.
Yeah. That's the human spirit right there, right? That's why we started writing down things and keeping track of stuff, right? So the next people won't have to go through all the heartaches and the challenges and the pain. Like, here's the answer to the test. Now you can choose not to take it or not to read it or whatever, right? But here it is right here, right? So Kyle, I started looking your stuff up as well. And I was like, man, all the things that he's talked about is the scientific approach to some of the concepts and things that I have in my mind that I want to do. So mine more, it's not holistically, right? But it's more mental focused in a way where I started the VRB, which is the Vision to Reality Blueprint, right?
Ooh,
so
I
understanding
like that.
and I'm listening to you, and I was reading your stuff and looking at neural and linguistic and all these different things, and I was like, man, I can't wait to talk to Kyle.
Cool.
I mean,
I appreciate that, man.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, now all of this is going to be on the podcast, some of it. All right, but we're going to start right here. All right. Hey, have you ever felt like you're stuck in a cycle of stress and uncertainty, unsure how to break free? Welcome to Hindsight, the podcast. I'm Lee Jones, your host, and today's guest, Kyle Smith, knows exactly what that's like. Kyle is a clarity consultant and creator of Neuro-Linguistic Somatic Experience, NLSE, a unique therapeutic approach that combines techniques from neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, and somatic body-based practices to help people find clarity, purpose, and fulfillment. So if you want to be more, you fill in the blank, then strap in as we dive into Kyle's journey from burnout to breakthrough and learn how he empowers others to reclaim control of their lives and cultivate a resilient, empowered mindset. Welcome to Hindsight, Kyle. So
Dude.
happy to have you on the show. I think I said that already.
Yeah. All good. That was a sick intro. Thank you very much.
Hey, I tell you what, when I said that when I started researching you, very little, I didn't go all into your life, but when I started looking into what you were working on, I was like, this is someone who I probably need to collaborate with, because you've done a lot of the legwork in understanding the neuro-linguistic, part of it, programming. So I didn't look into that yet. I just had a concept of how I know that I'm here. Maybe I want to be here. I have to first figure out who I am, what I am, where I want to be, and then what's the gap, right?
Totally.
So that's the simplistic view of it.
Totally.
You focused on the mindset, how the body works, all these different things, right? So I'm excited to have this conversation with you today, Kyle.
Yeah, it's going to be sweet. I'm really pumped for it. It's good. It's good.
Hey, so this is Hindsight, the podcast. So before we get into all of the things that we're going to talk about, let's talk a little bit about yourself, your journey, and how you come to want to pursue this, what do we call it earlier? You said I'll just say your purpose.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your journey.
Accurate.
Yeah.
So a key point in my journey was in 2016, and that was when I allowed things to happen by chance, where I was just flowing with the flow, and then my behavior, my character, I did not have very high regard for. And then I call it 2016, where it's post World's Toughest Mudder and pre World's Toughest Mudder, because there was such a huge change in my perception.
Okay.
And so with that, then I started pursuing a variety of modalities to see where I could resolve anything. So I was very open to exploration, very open-minded. I had a very high desire, and my pain threshold was very open to being tested. So those are the three things that also the folks that I work with personally, those are the three things as common denominators that no matter what walk of life, that's what they each have a degree of, and they can crush it.
Okay.
So after those modalities, or the modalities I've tried therapy. I went to, let's see, what else did I do? A lot of exercise. Then I went into breathwork. Breathwork stuck. I've been doing breathwork for 9 years now.
I keep hearing about breathwork. Go ahead.
Oh man, it's a way to regulate your entire body. It's great. So that's how the somatic ties into it. So we're integrating the body and the feels and the mind. And then from there, I just tried a variety of things. I found the things that resonated with me the most, where I understood it from not only a knowledge and conceptual level, I was participating in the practice and I could recognize the difference. And that's to say, I think that testing a bunch of modalities and seeing what works is really cool, because I believe that all of us have the same outcome in mind, where we want to have that openness, that freedom, that presence, that ability to pursue our goals and our passions without stories or anchors or emotional anchors, things in the past or the present preventing us. So then in 2000, 2 years ago, it was 2 years ago, so 2021, I started a podcast. And then during this podcast, I had a guest come on in particular, and I asked if he would be down for introducing me to some more guests that would be interested. Okay. And then through that, I met this fellow named Mark England. Mark England is the founder of the Enlifted method, ENLIFTED. And that's where I adopted the story work. So NLSE is a combination of story work and breath work put together. And then I just combined those modalities. And prior to this, I was a personal trainer for 13 years. So I already worked with people just on a physical well-being sense. Yeah. And then through that time, I recognized that the barrier for everybody was their brain. It wasn't doing the things, it was their thoughts. It was the words and the stories they were telling themselves about themselves. And that was influencing their behavior. So it's not the doing that's difficult. It's the conceptual, it's the headspace aspect. So similar to what you're talking about when you were going from in the military to not in the military for your own personal story, that is a shift of identity. So that difficulty in between is that you have a loss of identity, and then we have an internal existential crisis, which is interesting because it's internal. However, it seems existential, but it's all internal.
Right.
And then, so then it's developing the character and the identity in order to step into that next chapter. So I was a personal trainer for 13 years. Before that, I was pursuing a culinary career. I was going to be a chef for 5 years, 3 months, and 14 days. So these are each chapters that have contributed. And now I've just taken those lessons plus the updated lessons, stacked it into a practice to help folks alleviate those negative narratives and turn them from harmful to helpful. Or I like to put it in an alchemist way, where you turn it in from lead stories to golden stories. And those stories make up our identity.
Kyle,
So adjust the identity, and then we're happy campers.
Kyle, damn, I love it. I love it. I'm gonna tell you why, because I read about you. I was also listening to this book, and in it talks about the stories that our mind tells ourselves, and how you are the author of these stories. So get control of them. You talked earlier about how things just happen by happen chance. You weren't purposeful back in 2016, right? Now you're more purposeful. Now you pay attention to the stories that the stories that your mind are telling you. Now, I just wanted to say that because I'm really excited. If you can see my hands moving and things like that. Yeah. But look, I'm a simple guy. I'm a simple guy. And I really want to know, like, you're very wise. Modality. Let's talk about modality. When you say the different modalities, what does that mean?
So a modality, I consider it like a tool. You can think of it modality, tool, technique, practice. They're all synonymous.
Okay.
So it could be, so let's say healing modality. So the context or the theme is healing, and the modality would be going to a doctor, going to a therapist, going to a breathwork practitioner, going to a nutritionist, going to a personal trainer. And so each of those still come out to the same endpoint where we're feeling damn good. So I guess it's tools. It's tools that we can pick out of our toolbox and use them, and then learn how to use them properly. So we're not going to have a hammer, which is a tool, in the line at the DMV like we're talking on the phone.
Right.
That's improper use of that tool.
I got you. Hey, one thing I wanted to go back on as well. She said you had a high tolerance for pain. Like, what were you doing that required you to have a high tolerance for pain back then?
So the pain is an emotional pain.
Okay.
So it's
all right.
It's as being okay with testing it. And for 2016, that was physical pain, and that was the world's toughest mudder. So it was an endurance race.
The longest ever. Got you.
Yeah. So it was an endurance race. It wasn't self-flagellation or anything like that. It was just me going out, because when we don't have an outlet or a tool or a modality for getting that energy out, it'll build up. So then it builds up and it solidifies, and then we could have anxiety, depression, the longer that we allow that to solidify and get stronger and stronger, or harder, I should say, or can say. So then when it builds up enough, I did not have a tool outside of my fitness to alleviate that. And so with that one, it pushed me so far out of my comfort zone, and I questioned my capacity zone as well. So
I get it.
And so I just went because I just wanted to just explore and just freaking see what happens. And what I found with that modality, so a physiological modality, is that I broke down the body figuratively in order to build up the mind. And then when it comes into the other emotional parts, a story can feel really intense and very scary within us. And so it's being okay with testing a pain threshold rather than having a high pain test or threshold. Because when we go into stories, especially if they're stories that hurt, haunt, taunt, or annoy, and when I say stories as well, I mean past experiences, future experiences, present narratives, the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves, which is how I define mindset as well, so that we can have a higher or lesser opinion of ourselves. And there's that tension and that resistance that we feel towards doing something, from fear, judgment, procrastination, or let's see, what was the other one? There's another one. Fear, judgment, procrastination, and rejection. Those are the four main fears that we have. So that resistance to, let's say, getting up early or getting enough water in or going outside or going to a event that we don't want to event, it's incongruent. We'll have that build up, we'll have that story within us. And when we dive into the stories, not around, not over, not under, we go through the stories. I envision it where the story is the dragon, and the dragon's the harbinger of the gold behind it. If it's holding the gold, and we are the character facing that dragon. The better that we can use our words, the sharper that edge becomes. The more we can create pain to that dragon in order to get that gold. And I like to frame it where it's less of a dragon slayer, it's more becoming a dragon rider. So you don't kill the story, because we don't get rid of stories. We can't simply forget them, because we think forget equals not feel. And that's inaccurate, because there's still themes that flow through. I prefer it where we integrate the story, where we create objectivity, we create distance from it, is no longer impacting us. The stories that hurt, haunt, or annoy us or prevent us from going forward, and we become a dragon rider. So we own the stories rather than we try to kill the stories. No one can use those stories against us, because we have brought them, we've harnessed the power of that, and we become the dragon rider. So we get the dragon and the gold.
Right. Oh man, ultimate power. I tell you what, rejection. Yeah, that was a hard one for me. Back in the day, you know, you just, you know, now, and I tell people, because it's, you know, it's life, right? You go through seasons, and, you know, now someone said something that really simplified it, and everyone knows this, but you already have the no, right? You already have the no. So if you say nothing, you're a guaranteed no. But if you say what it is, ask, you know, whatever it is, you got a chance. Now it's 50-50. A lot of times it's 80-20 or 90-10, but you're so scared to explore it. You just So anyway, I dropped my pen.
All good. Yeah, sometimes you have 3 decisions and it's a 33 split.
Yeah, and there you go too. It's all kind of ways, right, to go about it. Hey, so you mentioned how you had different, I'll say, seasons, different careers. What is a lesson that you learned, and you said that you've taken the things that you learned and you've all applied it to what you're doing now. But what is a key lesson or something that just stands out to you that you still carry with you today?
Let's see, from my culinary career, something that I got a lot from, I got wisdom from that one, actually, because I started in the restaurant industry when I was 15, and then I was working with older folks all the time, and I love to work. I was doing better at work than I was in school. However, because the school had an apprenticeship program to the university that I would go to for post-secondary, I got my post-secondary hours done before I was done school. So I was ready for post-secondary before people were going. So I learned that lesson where when I actually participate, then I'm really efficient. It's in the doing.
That makes sense. Yeah.
And so for myself, I'm a doer, because that's just the way that I learn better. In contrast, now I can read stuff, and I have much better retention, and I have a system for it where I'll do notes or something like that.
Yeah.
But then I did not. So I learned that the expectations set for the stories behind why school is important were inaccurate. So that was a lesson that I got. That's the story that I'll take from that, because because that's the way that I just developed it. Yeah. And then from there, from the wisdom aspect, while I was in high school with folks around the same age as me, and then I go to work, I'm having 2 different conversations, because I'm speaking with folks that have a lifetime of experience while I'm just a teenager. And so I found that fast-tracked just my thoughts, my brain. I was able to experience more via other people's experiences, which is why I really like story work as well, because I get to hear about these stories and then learn from them as well while I'm facilitating sesh. And that would be a big one. Yeah.
Hey, I tell you what, that is a great one. First of all, being able to be in a diverse environment. Now, you talked about different ages. And I remember when I was younger, I got hired at McDonald's, and I worked there 4 days, and I was like, forget this. This is ridiculous, right? And I also had got hired to work at Sears. I don't know if you have heard of Sears.
I have. I remember Sears. You don't see them anymore.
I know, they're gone. But and I worked in the drapery department. Drapery department, right? So I was like, cool, right? It was a different experience, but the reason why I bring this up, there was this lady. She was 67 years old. I distinctly remember. 67 years old. I'm a teenager, and everyone was saying she's so mean. She's this. She's that. And I listen to people and I hear what they say, but I don't let it really impact my decision making a lot of times. Beautiful. So me and this lady, because I came to her from a different perspective, obviously, to your point, I can't come in there as a teenager mentally talking to this person. I have to come in open-minded, empathetic, willing to learn, because there's wisdom there that you can tap into. And a lot of people miss out on that these days because everyone thinks they know everything. But there's beautiful opportunities to go out and get some wisdom from some people who have experienced some things. Get yourself in some diverse environments to kind of broaden your stories.
You brought up a memory here.
Okay.
A story.
Yeah.
Very much lines in with this one, similar theme. There was a day I go for a lot of walks. We have this area, it's a promenade, it's overlooking the Root Rally. It's really cool. And there's a whole bunch of benches along it. So I was a little further down. I was sitting down, just hanging out. And then there was this older lady that was walking by. She had like a stretcher? Yeah. No, not a stretcher. The walker. She had a walker.
Okay, a walker.
And she was nimble. She was still nimble. Like, she was taking it for convenience. Like, she wanted to sit down. She was walking. And the thought popped up of asking her just what she thought was the key to a long life, or what is it that she believes to be the thing that contributed to longevity, and what are the things that work with that. So I got scared, and then I didn't. And then I remember this feeling's very distinct, where I'm like moments from doing something, like a second away from like opening my mouth to say, hey, and then I just didn't.
Yeah.
So it lingered, breathed into it a little bit, and I said, okay, if I see that lady again, I'll ask her.
Yeah.
No problem. So I got up, started walking. Sure as shit, she's at the very last bench that no matter what, I'm crossing by her.
Yeah.
So as I'm going into this, I said, okay, am I going to step into fear again, or am I going to step into courage? Because even though it's small, it's still, you don't know what to expect from a stranger. And I don't know who this lady was at all.
Right.
So I decided to step into courage. And courage is simply just doing the thing even though you're fearful.
Yeah.
And so I asked her, and we were having a cool conversation, and she said, physical activity, spending time with people that you care about, and then eating good. And that's pretty much it. So that's consistent. That's what everyone says later on in life.
Right.
That after that, I've chatted with some more older folks as well. So on the note of the older folks part, I asked, if you don't mind me asking, like, how old are you? She was 98 years old at that time. So if she could be like 100 at this point. And I was like, holy crap, you are nimble. Like, you're moving like, I didn't know. I thought she was around 60, maybe.
Oh, shoot. Wow.
Maybe like 70-ish.
Like,
yeah. I was flabbergasted. And what I said to her, and this is a very big catalyst moment. I think there's catalyzing characters, catalyzing moments. Steve Jobs has the quote, you can only connect the dots looking backwards, not forwards. So when I look backwards on life, I see when there's these moments that have accumulated to this point in time. Yeah. So it's interesting when folks ask, what is it that got you into this, or how long have you been working on this? I genuinely believe it was a lifetime of work. And then this is also my conscious decision to have it my life's work. And so I asked, I hope I get to live to the point that you are. And she said, you're already thinking. I think you're going to be just fine. I was like, damn. And I like, even right now, I feel it in my heart. Like, it's so good. It's cool.
I tell you what, Kyle, I got you beat. And this just happened, hell, this year. This year, I went out to and I know we're going to talk about NLSE.
Yeah, we'll get there.
But I'm enjoying this conversation with you. I went to the dunes out in California, the sand dunes, and I got stuck a little bit, had to back up and go through, but, through the sand. But up on the top of the hill, there was this gentleman. He had a World War II hat on, and I guess it was his daughter. So they're up there looking. I thought they were laughing, right? So when I get up to the top of the hill, I pull out, and they're walking towards me. And I said, I saw you guys up there laughing at me getting stuck in the sand, right? And they were like, no, we weren't laughing. She said, we did the same thing. We got stuck in the sand. We had to back up and then go around. But the reason why I tell you this guy was 103 years old.
Woo! Nice.
Walking around, and I was like, I went to LinkedIn immediately. I was like, I have never had a conversation with someone over 100 years old. And for it to be my first time, and this guy, to your point with the lady, was very nimble, had all of his, because we had a conversation. Like, we were up there talking because I was in the military, so we had a little conversation there. All of his wits about him. It was just amazing. So anyway, I wanted to share that. I got you beat on that one.
Yeah, 103 is legit, dude. 103 is legit.
Now, what I don't have you beat on is this NLSE. So this is your own, you've created this, correct?
This is my baby.
So can you share the moment that first made you realize how impactful NLSE, and let's talk about what it is, how impactful NLSE could be?
Okay, I like that. So NLSE is a practice, and I always refer to the folks I work with as practitioners. I don't call them clients. And I see myself as more of a facilitator, because it's them going into their stories, and then I just ask questions, and then we flow with it. And I do have a practice within that. So the way it's broken down, NLSE, neuro, meaning of the mind, and specifically mindset. And I mentioned the definition for mindset earlier. It's that I use. It's the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves, or our opinion of ourselves. And what that provides is a practical definition that we can contrast as a reference point to our present sense of self. So we can think higher of ourselves or lesser of ourselves. Both of them are our mindset. Yeah. And so we can adjust those accordingly. So it's getting them to think better of ourselves, and then think amazing of ourselves in some moments. And then no matter what, there's always going to be like fluctuations and peaks and valleys.
Okay.
So it's the tools to mitigate, to slow down, to decrease the chances of those down days. And then having the tools ready with the words and the breath, which we can do anywhere on the planet. And I purposefully picked these two modalities for that reason, because the words and the breath we can take anywhere. If anyone had any thoughts in between their brain, they can write it down. And then with breath, well, if we're not breathing, then that's an issue. That's an issue.
Yeah.
Probably get it checked out.
Yeah.
And so then from the neuro, working with the mind, we go into linguistics, and that's language. And that's the things that we say, think, write, and how we breathe. Breath is the language of the body. So for the first three, what we say, think, and write, the stories, like I mentioned earlier, are just a variety of experiences where it could be a past trauma. It could be a past experience at any degree. If you can write it down, we can do this process.
Okay.
It could be it could be anything like that. It could be forecasting what the future target you want to accomplish is, creating a story in alignment with that target, whether it's past tense, present tense, future tense, and then creating the plan once you've felt and embodied the idea of what this target and hitting it or working on it or working towards it feels like. And then the plan's easier because we decrease resistance.
Yeah.
So
love it.
There's harmful words and there's helpful words. And being that as a trainer, I'll have a fitness reference on this, where the building blocks of the body are the macronutrients. There's our carbohydrates, there's our fats, and our proteins. The quality of these macronutrients is going to impact the quality of our physical being. I view words as the ethereal or invisible macronutrients of the mind. If we feed our mind quality words, we're going to have quality thoughts. If we feed our mind shit words, we're going to have shit thoughts. And so then we're taking those stories and translating them, shifting them. We're identifying soft talk compared to solid talk. And an example of soft talk would be things that are indecisive or ambiguous, where you add an example. I will probably be at the party for 5 p.m. I might be at the party for 5 p.m. I could make it to the party for 5 p.m. I am perhaps going to make it to the party for 5 p.m. I might have been able to make it to the party at 5 p.m. So these are all soft talk, when we can just have solid talk and say, I'm going to be at the party for 5 p.m. And by removing these words, these harmful words, and if someone's actually indecisive, then obviously go with that. So when we take out the soft talk and we have that solid talk, what that does is it microdoses our decision making. We're able to make small decisions really well, and that provides us the opportunity to strengthen our decision making in order to make for big decisions, because we trust our decision making skills. We develop competence in our decisions because we've got our words working for us rather than against us. And as a side effect of competence, we develop confidence. Different pivot, where it's going from the ology, so it's the sciencey part. We're going into a little bit of the magic aspect. So this is the fun part. So abracadabra. Have you ever heard the word? When I say abracadabra, what do you think of?
Something's about to happen. Something is about to happen instantly and magical. Yeah.
Totally. Right? So abracadabra is an old language. It's Aramaic. And translated to English, it says, with my words I create, with my word I influence. So words are the magic behind what we can create in the reality we live in. It starts in a one-dimensional space, our brain. Then it goes to a two-dimensional space, paper or desktop. Then it goes to a three-dimensional space where we actually have created and constructed in reality. That's how magic works. And so we spell out these stories.
What does that mean again? I'm trying to write it down real quick. What does abracadabra mean again?
With my words I create, and with my words I influence.
I love that. That is powerful. Okay, go ahead. Thank you.
So characters, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, blah, 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 blah. These are all put together to spell words to create stories. The stories are a reality, and the words are the things that we spell together in order to create magic in our life, in a way. So it starts upstream with the words, the stories, the breath, that influences our behavior and our being. So it just makes it easier to do the things. And then, so how the breath fits into the linguistic is when we're breathing high and tight, we're good to fight. When we're breathing low and slow, we're good to flow. So when maybe we're in a situation where we're hanging out with friends and we're actually super comfortable. Like our external environment is like, yes, you're hanging out with your buddies. You could be drinking a beer. You could be smoking a joint. You could be just hanging around a campfire, shooting the shit. And then you recognize that your breathing's high and tight. And then folks will move into that feeling and be concerned about it. While so they're breathing high and tight, they're ready to fight. And there's no reasoning, there's no accuracy behind their body telling them that we're prepping for fighting people. So we down-regulate the breath low and slow into the belly, so that we're chill, we're calm, and we're grounded. Because we want to shift ourselves from a thermometer where we're reacting to the internal or external stimuli, and we're pivoting over to a thermostat where we're adjusting our internal temperature to our own liking. So it's a Goldilocks zone where it's not too high, it's not too low, it's just right. And that's where we find a sweet spot. And so if we're paying attention, if we're present, we can recognize, or when we're present, we can recognize when we're breathing either or, and we can adjust our temperature. So let's say it's before an event where we want to get pumped up and we're actually chill. We use the breath to upregulate ourselves. If it's the opposite, and we're going to hang out with our grandparents or parents and at like a friggin' chill dinner, then we can downregulate ourselves, which if folks haven't like stories around going to visit their parents and they find themselves in an upregulated state, downregulate because they're creating stories that don't even exist yet. Sure, it's based off of past experiences. However, it could be a new experience as well. So then the somatic going into the body as well, soma, and that's the physiological body. That's where the breath work and the active participation in upregulation, downregulation comes in. And then the thing that's different, the thing that the physical body has is it has an intelligence that it heals itself. We cut a finger, it's going to heal. It is time bound.
Okay.
Our energetic body, our emotions, our feelings, emotions are energy in motion.
Okay.
Emotion.
Right.
And so those feels that we have, whether to be lingering, they could be in here, and they're just stories. They're just pent up stories. So for our timeless body, our energetic body, we dive in and actively participate in the processing of unmetabolized emotions. So they haven't been metabolized, otherwise they wouldn't be lingering. So we participate in that active processing. And so from there, it goes into the experience, and the experience is real time. As it happens, you feel the change happening. I've had 30 minutes doing one language game with a person, and they said that I changed their life.
Wow.
And I was like, holy shit. And it was a complete pivot.
Yeah.
And so the reason as to why I went with story work and breath work is because it's so core to humanity. Because you mentioned before, words and stories are timeless. They can transcend our physical being. That's why we still have works from so many people that are long past. Words are, stories are, and our life is one big story. Our stories are going to be what we're remembered for. And then the breath, that just gets us like downregulated. It gets us into our body. It creates presence. And it's the whole process is an active meditation rather than a passive meditation. And that wasn't intentional. It's just a happy accident.
I tell you what, Kyle, look, different things. I love the NLSE because it puts a whole package together. So the reason why I say this, I remember some years ago reading, and it was like, pay attention to your breathing. Pay attention to how you feel. Like if you start to get hot or if you're breathing heavy, then pay attention. Like what's going on that's making you feel that way. Story work. I really want to hone in on story work because I believe this is one of those key things that everyone can focus in on and do. They don't need a whole session right now, but just to be aware of how your mind is. Thank you for the abracadabra because that was amazing. But let's dig a little deeper. Let's talk about what story work is and how does it change the way people see themselves.
So story work is the process of decreasing, getting unstuck, decluttering the mind, and making room to throw the party. So it starts with going into what is preventing us from getting to where we want to go, and then exploring themes. If someone has a really heavy story or trauma that they want to go into, then I'll go into it. If not, then that's totally okay. So when we go into stories, if it's an ouchy story, we're able to create distance from that story. So we're no longer in the story, we're out of the story, we're seeing the story. Because, correct. because our energetic body is timeless, we can take stories or experiences from decades ago and bring them into the present, even though there's no circumstances or situation or context close to that theme. We're just pulling it into the present. So then we go into that story and we go through a 4-step framework, and then, well, it's actually just 4-stepping. That's what we call it. And then it creates the distance from it. So it takes those ouchy feels, the hurt, haunt, taunt, and annoyed, and decreases it. On the flip side, when we're celebrating the win, celebrating progress, celebrating ourselves or celebrating others, we're talking about the good shit. It actually does the opposite. So we can find a point in time where we are proud of ourselves, and we can pull it into the present and feel those same feels. So if we can feel like crap for no reason, we can feel good for no reason too.
True. Yeah.
And so then those are the two main parts, where it's getting unstuck, then it's celebrating the wins, then we go into targets and goal setting. So what the practice does, in my mind, what I see it like as a phase aspect, is it first takes away all those stories that are preventing you from stepping into your authentic self. So I don't think it's a pursuit of finding the authentic self. I think the authentic self is already there, and we're just listening to other people's stories and behaving as they wish us to behave. So stories can be behavioral. So if our parents, so we could have money theme issues, we could have time theme issues, we have relational issues, and these can all stem from something back in the day. And then we can hit that, create our own meaning from the story, because folks will ask is what does this story mean to you, or what does this story mean about you? And most folks will give an answer. I have not had this one yet. However, if there's folks that say, well, why does there have to be any meaning associated with it at all? True, you don't have to. However, if you don't create your own meaning, someone else's meaning is going to step in. And I believe that's better to have our own rather than another's. And so we take away the intense feels in order to actually allow expression to happen. When that expression happens, then people are more open-minded to receiving a compliment, for example. So those cluttering things, those narratives that we have about ourselves, even if someone compliments us, if we don't believe their compliment, then we're going to discount their compliment, which is also going to train them how to behave around us. So if we don't have an internal dialogue where we're proud of ourselves, or we feel like we are progressing, we're seeing where we're gaining, we're seeing where we're making progress, then it's harder for us to be able to receive other people's abundance.
Wow.
And so when we declutter those narratives and really like bring the person to the forefront, then it goes into those really good feels, because people that are stuck in the suck are not going to feel the good feels as well. And so then that's how it works. And so it brings those stories and meaning close. So we feel good about ourselves in either case. We create distance from the ouchy stories, and we create closeness and meaning with the hell yeah stories.
It sounds like, I was about to ask you this question, but it sounds like what you just described is the approach to this. So if there's any difference in what you just said, then answer. But I believe you just answered it. But how do you identify and address the victim mentality in your practitioners, not your clients?
Oh man, it sounds so cool when you say it. Damn. Because I'm hearing it from other people's. I'm like, oh, that is already sick. So I have a working definition for victim mentality as well. And the victim mentality is an acquired personality trait in which a person tends to regard himself or herself as the victim of other people's actions, even in the absence of clear evidence. The victim mentality depends on a habitual thought process and attributions. The victim mentality, thus, is an adopted practice. It's a habitual process that we've attributed or have gained some attributions as a side effect. So that's the working definition. And breaking it down, I'll break it down too. So the victim mentality, depending on a habitual thought process, means that the same stories are being on repeat day after day. And a cool one, and I'm gonna go with the range. I'm gonna lowball it and then I'm gonna highball it. It's still freaking high. So on a daily basis, all of us humans have on average 60,000 to 80,000 of the exact same thoughts that we had yesterday.
Wow.
That's habitual.
Yeah.
We're not thinking about our thinking, and we're not diving into our thinking to gain an objective perspective over our subjective living. And so when we're in that, it's like someone who says they're an athlete. They go and they practice. Victim mentality. You go and you practice.
Yeah. Okay.
And so in the absence of clear evidence, that goes with if we're in the context where we're actually in a safe environment and we're feeling low on we're beating ourselves up, or we feel like a victim because of something that happened 20 years ago while we're still in isolation, that's us perpetuating that pain. No one else that was involved in any of those situations has anything to say about it. That's self-chosen. That's self-flagellation. That's like, this thing happened, so obviously I'm not worth it. So I'm going to maintain that story that I am not worth it, whatever the story could be. So, yeah, that's
okay.
Yeah.
Hey, all right. So now we're about to jump into some things that's going to help, and all of these things are helping hopefully the listeners. But this is specifically for the listeners. What are some simple? That's one of my key words. Practical.
I love it. Oh,
no.
I love that word too.
Steps for listeners who want to start taking control of their mindset right now, today.
Totally. The first thing that I would say that's really simple and super easy peasy. And the folks that do this, I want to emphasize how awesome it is. The folks that do this on a regular basis are leaps and bounds ahead of a variety of many folks. And that's to write down the stories. So write down the experience so that you take it from the head, which makes it an infinite space. It seems big, and then put it to paper and write until you're content. And folks believe that they'll write a lot, and they write about a paragraph or two. There's only been one story that was a solid couple of pages. So it's very rare because people will write until they're content. They know when the story's done. Anything past that, they're just trying to force it. You don't need to force it. Just keep it simple. Yeah. So taking those stories out of the head and into the mind, we can think of writing as a way to remember. We can also use writing as a way to forget. Or rather than forget, we can use it as a way to offload our brain. Because we only have so much cognitive space. We only have so much space that we can hold stuff. So if we're holding stuff that's not helping us, then that's just wasting space. And if we have more stories, it's similar to a computer desktop. The more desktop pages we have open, the slower the computer is going to go. Our brain's the same way. I like to refer to their brain as the stupidest supercomputer on the planet. And it's not really stupid. It's just really influenced easy. And so that would be the first thing. It would be write it down. And specifically, because I'll go through the 4-step process, and then whoever does it, they can shoot me a message and let me know. So the first step is title it and write it down. And you want to write things down conversationally as if you're speaking to a person about it. And you want to use proper grammar, and you're not making it as listicles. You're not making it like a list of things that happened to me. You're doing the whole story. And you write out each story.
Okay.
And so I personally think that if you go for the heaviest story, it's going to make everything easier. And the way that I like to think of this is if we're looking at a river and there's a lumber yard next door to it, and we have lumberjacks taking the logs out of the river, the log representing a story, the river representing our energy. That lumberjack takes it to the mill. They refine it down, and then they create something from the wood, a chair, a desk. So whatever the person imagined, it started in the river and it ended up on the friggin' living room floor. So then, let's say there's less logs coming. Fair enough. Now let's say the water starts going down. Weird. Some folks will come in and one day, the lumberjack will look and say, whoa, there's no logs and the river's dried out. Many folks may go with, I guess we're done for work. I guess we're done work today. I'm just going to go to the bar and hang out, rather than going upstream and figuring out what the blockage is to begin with. It. So people will avoid it and they'll peace out rather than go upstream to figure out where those are. So you go up there, and in each buildup of these emotions, there's a prominent story that flows over to the rest. And so we can take a log out of that dam, allow it to flow down the river, and then the rest of those stories flow with it. And then we have more logs to be able to process. Now, if we want to really dive in, we really want to put the gorilla on the table, we go as far upstream until we find the biggest dam we can. And that's the story we hit. Because no one's going to ever read any of the stories. I don't ever share any of the stories. Folks can burn the paper if they want to. At least it's out of there. So that would be the first part. Step one, write it, or title it and write it out. And then step two is to read it out loud. Okay. And that puts us at another point of exposure. So we have one point of exposure where it's in front of us. We create distance. We read through it. Then we get to understand the feels. So as we're reading with this first read, folks will start getting it up in the chest. They'll be like, they're holding up. They're ready to fight and flight. That's for sure. Yeah. And so what happens is they might start reading and they'll say, when I was 6 years old, I had this, and they'll start speaking fast so that they can hold their breath in the chest and so that they don't have to experience the story in real time. So they'll go as quickly as possible. So be mindful of that. Read at your normal rate of pace. And then step 3, we read the whole story 30% slower. So 70% you're talking break. This counters holding the breath up in the chest, because we'll start reading real slow, and eventually for us to be able to feel it. And then what I was talking about with that hardened emotion, it breaks. We crack the shell. Crack the shell. And underneath that shell is a balloon. And so we just poke the balloon. And when we're slowing it down, then we feel much more distance away from it. Step 3 is where folks really create, they're like, wow, I see this rather than I am this. And then step 4 is we read and breathe. So at every period, the occasional comma and sometimes insert a breath. When I was 6 years old, maintain that 30%. When I was 6 years old, in, out. And by the end of it, and 3 questions I always ask, and I ask myself if I'm doing this practice, and folks can ask themselves, is at each point, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, describe the vibe, describe the feels, like what are the emotions that are coming up. The next one is, where do I feel it in my body? Do I feel it in my heart? Do I feel it in my shoulders? Do I feel it in my chest? Do I feel it in my eyeballs? Do I feel it in my feet? Just to gain awareness. And then on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most intense, where does this land? So the scale can either, it's neither positive nor negative. It's just the amount of intensity, because we can feel a lot of abundance and feel overwhelmed by it. So that's a part. And then we could also feel a lot of scarcity and also feel overwhelmed by it. So I like a sweet spot where if it's a scale of 1 to 10, 4, 5, and 6, that's a beautiful place to be, because that's the Goldilocks zone. You're not too low, you're not too high, you're just right. So you get the good feels, you get the good thinking, and then you get the good doing.
I like it. All right. In the interest of time, because I think I could sit here and talk to you all day, but I'm not going to cold ass Canada to do it. No.
Fair. Yeah, fair.
You can come to Maryland now.
That's legit.
Hey, but is there something that you like to discuss that we haven't covered yet today? I know there are a lot of things that I haven't touched on. I really spoke on things that kind of resonated with me, but now it's your turn. What is it that you'd like to talk about that we haven't already?
Damn, that could go in so many
trust
different
me,
routes.
I know.
I'll go with I'll go with this. This will be a word. Two things. One is keep up the kindness. That's one thing. And I like to speak on that because I view kindness as a practice, not as a feeling. Kindness is something that is done and participated in, and it's recognized by others and recognized by ourselves. So keeping up the kindness to either ourselves or others, and it's to be a better person, even if even if the circumstances are not exactly in your favor. Stepping up and being the better person will always get you feeling better about yourself. And then another thing is be mindful of the stories that you've adopted and reflect on those and explore what stories do you hold that you don't actually believe in. That'd be a cool one to explore.
Wow. Say it again. What stories do you say that you hold on to and you don't even believe them?
Yeah,
wow.
Exactly. What stories do you hold on to and you don't even believe them? And they could be, because we adopt stories consciously or unconsciously.
Yeah, that's a powerful one. I like that. All right, Kyle. Hey, look. How can the listeners connect with you and learn more about your work with NLSE?
Sweet. I'm Dapper Dude Kyle anywhere. So I'm on the Instagrams, I'm on the Facebook, so you can find me at Dapper Dude Kyle. And I have a website. You'll be able to find that at any of the places. And then that's pretty much it. Reach out anytime that you have any curiosities or questions, or if this piques your interest, and if a story's popped up, or if you have a question about it, feel free to reach out. I don't mind. I love conversation. It's what I do.
I love it too, man, because it's funny how you go your whole life and you don't know until you know. You don't know how powerful your mind is until you really know how powerful your mind is, if that makes sense. But anyway, So thank you so much. I'm starting to get into, well, I'm not starting to. And then I love the other one. Who was it that said you can't connect the dots unless you...
Steve Jobs.
Steve Jobs. You give me some diamonds, some key things that I'll definitely take with me. Kyle, thank you. And from identifying the roots of victim mentality to sharing the power of breathwork and stories, Kyle has offered so many actionable steps to help us gain clarity and control in our lives. And thank you, Kyle, for sharing your story and for shedding light on the transformative power of NLSE. And to all the listeners, look, be sure to subscribe to Hindsight, the podcast, so you don't miss another episode packed with inspiration and wisdom from enlightening guests just like Kyle. Thank you so much. Hey, thanks for joining me here on Hindsight, the podcast. I'm your host, Lee Jones. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I know I did. And while I have you here, why don't you take your mouse, go over and click on that subscribe button. No, not right there. Over to the right. No, down, right there. Boom. Thank you. Now, thank you for subscribing to Hindsight, the podcast. I'm your host, Lee Jones.